My life is hell. That day, like any other, was incredibly difficult. It started off wrong from the early morning. I woke up at 5 a.m., washed up, and took the dog for a walk. The weather was terrible, mud and puddles everywhere, and my dog Rex decided to splash around in them with all his might. After such a walk, I spent a long time cleaning Rex from the dirt, while also trying to wake up the kids. The first task was much easier than the second. They refused to get out of bed. I had to pull the blanket off them, after which I was met with a lot of complaints. Then the kids asked for pancakes for breakfast. Half asleep, I made the batter and quickly fried a few pancakes, but they just refused to eat them because they no longer wanted breakfast. It was as if they were mocking me. This made me furious right from the morning. It felt like I was in hell. How sick I am of all this fuss. I just want to relax, but I have to rush to school and kindergarten. The younger child, who is 5, refused to dress himself and started throwing a fit. I had to dress him quickly. The older one is 8, and he was upset too. He wanted just as much attention, so he also refused to dress himself. Finally, after getting them dressed, I quickly took one to kindergarten, the other to school, and ran to work. Of course, I was late, and my boss yelled at me. After working all day, I was extremely tired and picked up the kids. I had to go to the store, but the sons didn't want to go, so they whined and got on my nerves. How can I explain to them so they understand that I'm more tired than they are, and I don't want to go either? But I have to? And by the way, I still have to walk the dog and cook dinner. When I got home, I took the dog out for a walk, then prepared dinner. The kids sat down at the table, and suddenly the phone rang, so I stepped into the hallway to answer it. My husband was calling to say he would be home soon. Suddenly I heard shouting. I ran back to the kitchen and saw that the floor was covered in food, the furniture too, and the kids were smeared with food. I asked what happened, and they started yelling at each other. It turned out they had a fight and threw food at each other in anger. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I wasn't managing them at all. They don't respect me and don't listen to me. I had to take them to the bathroom and wash them, then cook the food all over again while cleaning the kitchen. Then my husband came home. We ate, and I had to wash a mountain of dishes. I had no strength left for anything. What upset me the most was that it was Monday, just the start of another hard week. Then came the ordeal of putting the disobedient kids to bed. Finally, I was in bed. I didn't even have the energy to watch TV. It seemed like I wouldn't last long in this mode. I was completely exhausted, and my husband started urging me to watch a series. I refused for a long time because I didn't even feel like watching anything. I just wanted to lie in silence, but eventually, he convinced me. While he was turning on the series, he was telling me how tired he was today, complaining that they gave him the wrong soup in the cafeteria and that he didn't get to play on the computer at work that day. He often has free time at work, during which he plays. At that moment, I just wanted to tell him off. He doesn't understand what real fatigue is, but I didn't even have the strength to respond. I was in despair. I have to get up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Watching the series was very hard. I started falling asleep and I drifted off. When I opened my eyes, I was surprised that it was light outside. At 5 a.m., it's usually dark, but there was no surprise or fatigue. When I looked at the clock, I was horrified. It was 12 noon. God, I've overslept everything. I'm going to get fired. I jumped up and ran to the kids' room. They weren't home, and my husband wasn't there either. I wanted to call my boss, but I couldn't find his number in my phone, and the wallpaper on my phone was different for some reason. I started calling my husband, but he didn't answer. I quickly began getting ready. When I went to the bathroom to wash up, I saw my reflection in the mirror and was stunned. I looked about 10 years older. Then I realized that I must be dreaming. My mood dropped from what I saw. I went to the fridge to eat something to relieve the stress. When I opened the fridge, I was surprised. There were so many interesting and delicious things in there. I started trying everything. What an interesting dream, I thought. It's the first time I've tasted food in a dream. I looked at the calendar and was surprised. It showed the year 2034. Suddenly, the front door opened and I heard unfamiliar voices. I went to see who had come and recognized my children, only they looked much older. We hugged out of habit. I asked the kids if they were hungry. They said yes. I said I would go cook something for them, but suddenly my eldest son stopped me and said he had done everything himself. I became suspicious. Maybe this isn't a dream and I'm dead and in heaven? Although unlikely, I've aged, so it's probably a dream. Suddenly, my son shouted from the kitchen and started calling me. I quickly ran over and asked what had happened. He pointed to the TV. There was breaking news. The anchor was talking about a disaster that happened today, saying that what we all feared had happened, and there was a direct threat to all life on Earth. The ozone layer had begun to collapse, so very soon, radiation could destroy all life. No one could say for sure when the disaster would reach us, but it would definitely happen within the week. My sons looked at me in fear, and I tried to calm them down, saying that the scientists would figure something out. The news anchor advised not to go outside with exposed skin and to keep windows covered. Suddenly, the reporter said they had exclusive video footage from the scene of the tragedy and advised all those with weak nerves to step away from their screens. Under normal circumstances, I would have turned off the TV, but it was important to keep watching. Better to know how to act in an extreme situation. The scene changed. The reporter was in the center of India, standing in the middle of a city, his skin bright red. "Don't go outside," he said. "The radiation is very strong. Don't repeat our mistakes." Suddenly, he started vomiting, and the scene changed. "Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. Please stay safe and avoid going outside. We're monitoring the situation, and we'll update you as soon as we have more information." Then the regular TV programming resumed. We stood there in shock. I went to the window and closed the curtains. My eldest son continued cooking, and the younger one turned on the light in the kitchen. I got scared. I called my husband. He said he'd be home soon, but after the call, I remembered that this was just a dream, so there was no need to worry. But my kids were so upset, I couldn't ignore it. So I went around closing all the curtains in the apartment. As I was closing them, I thought about how this life torments me even in my sleep. Even here, I have problems. Soon, my husband arrived with bags of groceries. Today, we were all sent home from work and advised to stock up on more food and stay inside. Unfortunately, I couldn't buy more. Everything was sold out. "It's better to ration our food now," he said. I listened closely and got even more scared. My husband had aged about 10 years and had also gained a lot of weight. We sat down at the table and agreed not to go outside anymore and to start rationing food. When the day ended, my husband and I went to bed, talked a little, and quickly fell asleep. Before bed, I really hoped to wake up at home, far away from this tragedy, because this dream was dragging on. When I opened my eyes, I was in a dark room. My husband was lying next to me. The curtains were closed. I looked at the clock. It was 5 a.m. Time to get up. My nightmare was over. I walked to the curtains and opened them. The weather was beautiful. It was a very lovely sunrise. Suddenly, my husband jumped up and yelled, "What are you doing? Close them quickly!" Seeing him, fear gripped me. He was still fat and 10 years older. I quickly closed them and panicked, wondering how 10 years could have passed. He started scolding me for opening the curtains, and I agreed with him and promised not to do it again. I told him everything, said I didn't remember how the last 10 years had flown by. He started crying and said it was his fault. "Do you remember how 10 years ago you couldn't handle the stress and you had a heart attack? You fell into a coma. We were all so worried. We couldn't imagine what it was like for you then. But thank God the doctors saved you. Maybe that's why you have memory problems now. But we, the kids and I, are trying our best to help you with everything now," my husband said. We hugged and promised each other we would get through this together. The whole week, we watched terrible videos of entire cities dying out. On the second week, the electricity went out, and we started showing symptoms of radiation sickness. Teeth fell out, skin deteriorated, and the food almost ran out. My younger son, who was 15, had it the worst. He was vomiting blood. By the third week, I was the only one left. Out of my entire family, I was the sole survivor. I cried non-stop and prayed to God to take me soon too. One day I started gasping for air, and within a second I felt like I was struck by lightning. I woke up in a hospital. The first thing I asked was what year it was. The nurse smiled and said it was 2024. Then I asked what had happened to me. She said I had a heart attack and fell into a coma, but a miracle happened, and I woke up. When I was discharged, my husband didn't let me work anymore, and the kids started treating me with great care, becoming more independent. Especially my older son, who started helping me with everything. Sometime later, I saw a news story about a factory in India that was slowly destroying the ozone layer. Fear gripped me. I wrote everywhere that this needed to be stopped, told everyone about my vision, but they looked at me like I was crazy. But I know it's going to happen. Recently, my husband got a promotion at work and started earning a lot. I decided that since no one was listening to me, they would regret it later, but I would try to save my family. I started stocking up on long-lasting food and filling the basement. Besides that, I'm buying lid plates to line it. I also plan to buy the best generator. When the disaster happens, I'll be 100% ready for it, and all of this will save our family.